In the Lantern Bar on Harbor Street, a quiet bartender was about to face 5 cocky Marines who thought they had her figured out. What started as routine drink service took a shocking turn when they came face to face with questions about her past she'd spent 3 years avoiding. Anna Reyes wasn't your typical bartender. For over a decade, she had spent her life as a Marine Corps pilot, known for flying impossible missions that others wouldn't dare attempt. When they encountered her methodical movements and pressed about her call sign, they had no idea they were about to witness the emergence of someone who could coordinate life-and-death operations under impossible conditions. Anna's two-word response, "Death Angel," would lead to a night that would test every skill she'd tried to leave behind. What began as Marines mocking a bartender would become the largest civilian rescue operation in the harbor's history. The community would never be the same after discovering that their quiet drink server was the pilot who once defied death itself to bring 17 Marines home through a dust storm in Helmand Province. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Lantern squatted on Harbor Street like a barnacle on a pier piling, weathered, salt-stained, and stubbornly permanent. Inside, the familiar cocktail of stale beer, bleach, and ocean air mixed with the sound of off-key karaoke and the steady clink of glasses. Anna Reyes moved behind the bar with the fluid efficiency of someone who'd learned long ago that smooth operations meant fewer questions. She restocked the cooler with mechanical precision, her movements economical and purposeful. At 34, Anna had perfected the art of being present but unremarkable. Brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, jeans and a black Henley that revealed nothing, and the kind of steady composure that made customers forget she was there until they needed another drink. The evening crowd was typical for a Tuesday. A handful of regulars nursing beers, 2 couples sharing nachos, and Jax, a graying German shepherd with gentle eyes, sprawled near the jukebox, where his owner, a retired Coast Guard mechanic named Pete, fed him the occasional French fry. Elias Huang, the bar's owner, worked the room with his characteristic warmth, checking on guests and refilling water glasses without being asked. At the far end of the bar, Maria Santos wiped down bottles with quick, practiced strokes. She'd been working at the Lantern for 3 months now, still learning the rhythm of the place. Former Army fueler, Anna had guessed from the way Maria handled logistics, though she'd never asked directly. The Lantern was the kind of place where people's pasts stayed past, unless they chose otherwise. The door chimed, bringing a gust of salt air and the sound of boots on worn hardwood. 5 Marines in civilian clothes, jeans, polo shirts, and the unmistakable bearing of young men who'd been told they were America's finest. Anna clocked them immediately. Early 20s, fresh from some training cycle, running on adrenaline and attitude. Their leader, a stocky 30-year-old with close-cropped hair and a swagger that broadcast insecurity, scanned the room like he owned it. LCPL Trevor "TikTok" Dunn had earned his nickname for his constant need to document and broadcast everything, though tonight he'd left his phone in his pocket, focused instead on impressing his squad. "5 beers," Dunn announced, slapping a 20 on the bar. "Whatever's cold." Anna reached for the taps without looking up. Behind Dunn, she registered the others. A serious-looking staff sergeant with watchful eyes, a young Asian woman who seemed to take in every detail, and 2 more Marines who flanked Dunn like an entourage. The staff sergeant, Sergeant Mason Brick Alvarez, hung back slightly, his posture suggesting he was babysitting more than socializing. "You fly?" Dunn asked suddenly, nodding toward Anna as she set down the beers. "Excuse me?" "The way you move," Dunn gestured vaguely, "like you're checking instruments or something, all precise and whatnot. My sister's in flight school, does the same thing, that cute flight lingo." A few of his buddies chuckled. PFC May Park, the young woman, didn't laugh. She was studying Anna with the kind of attention that experienced NCOs took notice. "I attend bar," Anna said simply, sliding the last beer across the polished wood. "Come on," Dunn pressed, emboldened by what he took as bashfulness. "Nobody moves like that unless they've got stick time." What'd you fly? Cessnas? Maybe helicopters? He made exaggerated rotor motions with his hands, drawing more laughter from his friends. Brick shifted uncomfortably. Dunn, leave the lady alone. But Dunn was on a roll now, playing to his audience. I bet you got a call sign and everything. What is it? Sky Princess? Cloud Dancer? He turned to his buddies with theatrical expectation. Come on, what's your call sign, aviator? The bar had gone quieter, conversation tapering as other patrons began to sense something building. Anna set down the towel she'd been holding and looked directly at Dunn for the time. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and held depths that made him want to look away. "Death Angel," she said quietly. The laughter erupted immediately. Dunn slapped his thigh. His buddies grinned and shook their heads, and someone made a comment about dramatic bartenders. But Brick wasn't laughing. He was looking at Anna's face, noting the way her eyes swept the room in a pattern. Exits first, windows second, potential cover third. The same scan pattern he'd seen in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in places where situational awareness meant the difference between going home and going home in a box. "Death Angel," Dunn repeated, raising his beer in a mock toast. "That's perfect. I love it. Death Angel, serving up shots and taking names." Anna's expression didn't change, but something in the set of her shoulders caught Brick's attention. He followed her gaze as it swept the room again. Emergency exits, sight lines, potential threats. It wasn't paranoia. It was the ingrained caution of someone who'd learned to read danger in the smallest details. Near the jukebox, Jax lifted his head and fixed his attention on Anna, some instinct making him alert to the shift in the room's energy. Pete scratched behind the dog's ears absently, but Jax remained focused, reading the subtle tension that humans were still missing. From behind the bar, Elias caught Anna's eye and raised an eyebrow in a silent question. She shook her head slightly. She could handle this. Maria continued cleaning glasses, but her movements had become more deliberate, positioning herself where she could see the Marines in the back exit. "So where'd you really fly, Death Angel?" one of Dunn's friends asked. "Crop dusters? News choppers?" Anna reached for a glass and began polishing it with steady, methodical strokes. "Cobra," she said without looking up. The word hit different than her call sign. Dunn's smile faltered slightly. Even Marines who'd never seen combat knew what a Cobra was. An AH-1Z attack helicopter, twin-engine, armor-plated, and designed to bring death from above with surgical precision. "Right," Dunn said, his laugh sounding forced now. "Sure you did." But Brick was studying the barely visible scar at Anna's hairline, the kind that came from impact against a helmet visor. His eyes dropped to her keychain beside the register, standard bar keys, but hanging from a faded challenge coin that he recognized even at a distance. Not the kind that you could buy online. The conversation drifted after that, the Marines moving to a table near the windows where they could see the harbor. But Brick lingered at the bar, nursing his beer and watching Anna work. She moved with the kind of economy that came from operating in confined spaces under stress. When she reached for the top shelf, her body turned in a way that kept her back covered. When someone approached from her blind side, she sensed them before they spoke. Outside, the fog was beginning to roll in earlier than forecasted, and the distant buoy foghorn gave its mournful call across the water. Anna glanced toward the windows, reading the weather with the instincts of someone who'd once needed to know which way the wind was blowing to stay alive. The evening might have continued like any other, Marines talking loud, regulars minding their own business, and Anna keeping the drinks flowing with professional detachment. But then a low rolling tremor rattled the glassware on the shelves, subtle enough that most patrons barely noticed. Anna's hand went still on the bottle she'd been pouring. Her head came up, and for just a moment, every customer in the Lantern could see exactly who she'd been before she became their quiet bartender. The tremor passed in seconds, leaving only the gentle clink of settling glassware and the nervous laughter of customers who weren't sure if they should be concerned. Phones began buzzing almost immediately as earthquake alert apps registered the minor seismic event, magnitude 4.2, centered 15 miles offshore, hardly worth mentioning by California standards. Anna resumed pouring as if nothing had happened, but Brick noticed that her free hand had instinctively moved to steady the bottles on the back bar. Such a small thing, but it spoke to reflexes honed by experience with systems under stress. "Sorry about the guys," Brick said, approaching the bar with his empty glass. "They're good Marines, just young and stupid." "They're fine," Anna replied, refilling his beer with mechanical precision. "Dunn especially. Kid's got more mouth than sense, but his heart's in the right place." Brick paused, studying her profile. "Airspace around here must get interesting with the harbor traffic and the Coast Guard station." It was a test, casually delivered. Anna's response was immediate and precise. "Victor 237 airspace, surface to 4,000 feet. Helicopter traffic inbound from 270 degrees typically transitions at 1500 to avoid fixed-wing departure corridors from the municipal field." The kind of specific knowledge that didn't come from watching YouTube videos or reading Wikipedia. Brick set his beer down carefully. "You really flew Cobras." It wasn't a question. Anna met his eyes for a moment, and he saw something there. Not pride exactly, but the quiet recognition of one professional acknowledging another. "Long time ago," she said. At the Marines' table, the conversation had turned to their upcoming deployment. Dunn was holding court, spinning stories about training exercises and speculating about what real combat would be like. May Park sat quietly, listening more than talking, her attention occasionally drifting to Anna behind the bar. "You ever been in actual combat?" Jason Webb asked Dunn, his sunburnt face earnest. "Not yet," Dunn admitted, "but I'm ready. We all are. 3 years of training for this." From a corner booth, a gravelly voice cut through their bravado. 3 years don't mean shit when the rounds start flying. The speaker was Doc Valentina Ortiz, off-duty Navy corpsman, sitting alone with the club soda and a paperback novel. She had the weathered look of someone who'd seen multiple deployments and had strong opinions about what young Marines thought they knew. "Ma'am?" Dunn's voice carried just enough challenge to make Brick look up sharply. "You heard me, Lance Corporal. All that training's just preparation for preparation. Real thing's different." Doc's voice was matter-of-fact, not dismissive, the tone of someone stating an observable truth. "Ask anyone who's been there." She nodded toward Anna, who was now methodically checking the caps on bottles she'd already checked twice. "Bet your bartender could tell you stories." "Her?" Dunn scoffed. "Death Angel over there?" "Right." The conversation might have continued, but Brick was no longer listening. His attention was fixed on the challenge coin he'd accidentally dropped beside his beer glass, an old pilot's coin from the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. He slid it toward Anna as she reached for her empty glass. She returned it to him without looking down, her fingers identifying the shape and weight by touch alone, the kind of muscle memory that came from years of handling similar coins in squadron ready rooms and briefing tents. "Keep it," Brick said quietly. "I've got one," Anna replied, then immediately looked like she regretted the admission. The weather outside was deteriorating faster than predicted. The fog bank that had been a distant gray line on the horizon was now rolling through the harbor like a slow avalanche, swallowing boats and buoys in its advance. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees in the last hour, and the wind was picking up, rattling the windows with growing insistence. Anna moved to adjust the thermostat, but her path took her past the windows where she paused to study the approaching weather. Brick watched her read the signs: wind direction from the whitecaps, fog density from the way the harbor lights diffused, visibility from how quickly the distant channel markers disappeared. "The fog's coming in early," she said to Elias, who was clearing tables nearby. "Good thing we stocked up on candles," he replied with a grin. Elias was the kind of man who kept first aid kits in every room and a generator in the basement, all while maintaining the cheerful demeanor of someone who simply liked to be prepared. May Park had been watching Anna with growing curiosity. Unlike Dunn's loud assumptions, May's attention was analytical, cataloging details. The way Anna moved in precise patterns behind the bar, how she checked the emergency exits every few minutes without seeming to do so, the slight tension in her shoulders when helicopters passed overhead, Coast Guard birds heading out on patrol. "My dad flew helicopters in Korea," May said quietly when Anna brought fresh napkins to their table. Anna nodded politely and started to move away, but May continued. "He said the hardest part wasn't the flying, it was bringing people home in weather that shouldn't be flyable." For just a moment, Anna's composed mask slipped. Something flickered across her face. Pain, recognition, maybe both. Then it was gone, professional distance restored. "Your dad sounds like he was a good pilot," Anna said simply. "He was, until the crash." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Anna's hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder, where a small tattoo lay hidden beneath her shirt. Eagle, globe, and anchor, the only visible reminder of who she'd been. Outside, the fog continued its inexorable advance, and the buoy horns were growing more frequent as visibility dropped. The first tendrils of mist began creeping through the harbor entrance, ghostly fingers reaching toward shore. That's when the lights flickered. The first flicker might have been dismissed as a brief grid fluctuation, the kind of momentary dimming that happened when the wind picked up along the coast. But the second flicker lasted longer, and the third plunged the lantern into complete darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in for perhaps 10 seconds before it too failed, leaving 43 people trapped in absolute blackness. The silence that followed was profound. No air conditioning hum, no refrigerator compressor, no background electrical buzz. Just the sound of breathing, shifting clothes, and the growing murmur of confusion. Then the screaming started. Not panic screaming, not yet, but the sharp sounds of people suddenly disoriented in familiar space that had become alien. A chair scraped, glass shattered, someone stumbled into a table. "Nobody move!" The voice that cut through the darkness was crisp, authoritative, and utterly calm. Anna's bartender persona had vanished completely, replaced by something harder and infinitely more competent. "Stay exactly where you are. Breathe. Eyes will adjust." From somewhere in the darkness came Elias's voice. "Emergency supplies are behind the bar. Anna, you know where. Got 'em." Anna was already moving with the confidence of someone navigating by memory and instinct. The sound of a cabinet opening, objects being systematically sorted. "Maria, you still here?" "Right behind you." Maria's voice came from the expected position, near the service station. "Good. There's a crate of glow sticks in the storage room. 30 seconds to get them. You know the layout?" "Yes." "Go." "Everyone else, sound off by location. Start from the front door and work clockwise." It was a simple command system, the kind of accountability procedure that turned chaos into manageable data. One by one, voices called out positions. Front booth, 2 people. Bar stools, 3 of us. Back table by the windows, 5 Marines. Brick's voice carried clearly from the Marines' position. "Sergeant Alvarez, squad of 5, all accounted for, no injuries." The fact that he'd immediately given rank and unit status told Anna everything she needed to know about Sergeant Alvarez. This was someone who understood crisis protocol. Maria returned with the glow sticks just as Anna found the main emergency kit. The soft crack hiss of chemical light filled the darkness, followed by an eerie green glow that turned the lantern into something from another world. "Green sticks mark safe areas and exits," Anna announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Blue sticks mark first aid stations. Red sticks mark hazards. Nobody moves without a light source. Nobody goes outside without checking with me first." She was already thinking 3 steps ahead, creating a color-coded system that would work even with civilians who had no emergency training. The kind of systematic approach that kept people alive when everything went wrong. Dunn's voice carried a note of confusion. "How do you know all this stuff?" "Experience," Anna replied curtly, then moved on to more pressing concerns. "Elias, what's our power situation?" "Generator in the basement, but the main breaker tripped. Could be a local outage or something bigger." Elias was distributing green glow sticks to mark the exits, his movements calm and practiced. Outside, the fog had thickened dramatically. Through the windows, they could see nothing but gray-green murk lit by the occasional passing car headlight. But there was something else. A reddish glow blooming somewhere toward the harbor, visible even through the dense fog. "That's not good," May observed quietly. Anna moved to the window, her silhouette outlined against the strange red glow. Even through the fog, she could tell that something at the harbor was burning. The way the light pulsed and flickered suggested electrical fire, probably from the earthquake damage to the pier infrastructure. From the darkness outside came a sound that made everyone freeze. The rapid, arrhythmic clanging of the harbor bellbuoy. Driven by swells that shouldn't exist in the normally calm inner harbor. It meant the earthquake had been bigger than the initial reports suggested, or there had been underwater damage that was now affecting wave patterns. Jax appeared at Anna's side, his bulk solid and reassuring in the weird green light. The old military working dog had moved through the darkness without hesitation, checking on people with the calm competence of an animal trained for crisis situations. His presence seemed to steady everyone who saw him. "Jax, phone service?" Anna asked. Multiple people checked their devices. No bars, emergency calls only, nothing. "Landline?" Elias lifted the bar phone, listened, shook his head. "Dead." Anna processed this information with a methodical approach of someone accustomed to working with degraded communications. No power, no phones, no way to call for help.
Something burning in the harbor. The fog meant no visual confirmation of the situation outside their immediate area. "All right," she said, her voice carrying the kind of steady authority that made people want to follow orders. "We establish security here first, then assess external situation. Maria, how many people do we have total?" 43, including staff. "Injuries?" Doc Ortiz spoke from a corner where she'd established an impromptu aid station with a blue glow stick. "Minor cuts from the glass breakage, one possible sprained wrist, nothing serious yet." Yet was the operative word. Anna was thinking ahead to what might come next. More seismic activity, fire spread, people trying to leave in panic and getting lost in the fog. The kind of secondary disasters that killed more people than the initial emergency. From outside came a new sound. Sirens, muffled and distorted by the fog, but definitely emergency vehicles heading toward the harbor. Whatever was burning out there was big enough to draw multiple responses. "I'm going to check the roof," Anna announced. "Get a visual on what's happening." "I'll come with you," Brick offered immediately. Anna nodded. She'd already assessed Sergeant Alvarez as someone who could be relied upon to follow orders and watch her back. "Bring a red glow stick. Mark any hazards we find." As they headed toward the maintenance ladder that led to the flat section of roof where Elias stored extra chairs during the winter, Anna caught Maria's eye. "If we're not back in 10 minutes, you're in charge of the ground floor. Keep everyone calm and in groups. Don't let anyone leave alone." Maria nodded, understanding intuitively that Anna was doing more than delegating responsibility. She was creating a command structure that would function even if the people at the top disappeared. The ladder was narrow and steep, designed for occasional maintenance rather than emergency access. Anna climbed with smooth efficiency, Brick following close behind. When they emerged onto the roof, the scope of the situation became immediately clear. The fog was so thick they could barely see the street below, but the red glow was much brighter now, and definitely coming from the harbor. More alarming was what they could hear. The sound of metal groaning under stress, the hiss of water hitting hot surfaces, and underneath it all, the faint sound of voices calling for help. People were stranded out there in the fog and the dark, and professional emergency responders were either overwhelmed or unable to navigate in the zero visibility conditions. Anna looked at the flat roof section, estimating dimensions and load capacity. Then she looked at Brick, seeing in his steady expression the same assessment she was making. "We're going to need to build a landing zone," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was the inevitable conclusion of someone trained to solve problems with available resources. The lantern's roof was large enough, flat enough, and positioned well enough to serve as a makeshift helipad, if they could mark it properly and establish communications with inbound aircraft. Below them, the harbor bell continued its frantic clanging, and the red glow pulsed brighter against the fog. Time was running out for whoever was trapped out there. Anna Reyes, former Marine pilot, current bartender, was about to discover that some skills never fade. They just wait for the right moment to save lives.
There's a garden hose connection by the stairwell. Get it connected and charged. We'll need to keep the landing area damp. Hot exhaust and dry roofing material don't mix. As the Marines set to work, Anna began pacing off distances, her movements systematic and purposeful. She counted steps between the roof edge and the cleared area, estimated the height above street level, calculated approach angles, the kind of spatial mathematics that had once been second nature. "NATO standard landing pattern," she muttered, pulling green glow sticks from her pocket. Inverted T with the crossbar facing the approach vector. Brick paused in his furniture moving to watch her work. Anna was placing the chemical lights with the precision of someone who'd done this before, not as a drill, but for real in places where getting it wrong meant people died. She positioned the first light at what would be the nose position of an aircraft, then paced off the proper distances for the crossbar. The pattern would be visible from the air, even in thick fog, giving pilots a clear reference for size, orientation, and wind direction. From the ladder entrance, Maria's voice called up. "Anna, we've got more people coming in. The fog's so thick they can't find their cars." "How many?" "6 so far. Couple with kids, elderly man, someone from the restaurant next door." Anna absorbed this information without breaking stride. More people meant more potential casualties if things went wrong, but it also meant more hands if they needed them. "Doc still have the triage situation under control?" "She's got 3 stations set up now. Says she needs more first aid supplies if we're expecting casualties." "Elias's emergency kit has extra gauze and tape. Tell her to use whatever she needs." The Marines worked with surprising efficiency. Dunn had the hose charged and was systematically wetting down the landing area, the water darkening the black roofing material. May had discovered a small windsock on the adjacent building and was using it to confirm wind direction. Webb and another Marine whose name Anna hadn't caught were securing loose material with military-issue 550 cord that Brick had produced from somewhere. "Where'd you learn to set up an LZ?" Dunn asked, as he dragged the hose to cover another section of roof. "Ana santo Diu paes que duis que estuen y trabajan más rápido", respondió Ana, pero sin enojarse. Ahora estaba colocando bengalas y verificaba cada una para asegurarse de que su mecanismo de encendido funcionara. El resplandor rojo del puerto se hacía más intenso y los sonidos de angustia se hacían más nítidos, voces pidiendo ayuda, el crujido metálico de metal sometido a tensión y el chapoteo del agua contra los pilotes dañados. Lo que fuera que hubiera sucedido ahí abajo se estaba agravando. «Necesito comunicaciones», dijo Ana, más para sí misma que para nadie más. «Tengo esto controlado», ofreció May, sacando un pequeño radio portátil de su bolsillo. «Baofeng UB5R. No tiene mucho alcance, pero puede detectar algunas frecuencias de emergencia». Ana tomó la radio, recorriendo rápidamente los canales preestablecidos. Estática, estática, una breve ráfaga de español, más estática. Luego, lentamente, una transmisión que la hizo detenerse. «Estación Aéreo Costero, despacho a cualquier escuadrón en esta red. Tenemos múltiples llamadas de socorro provenientes del área del puerto. Visibilidad 0. Solicitamos una respuesta inmediata de búsqueda y rescate». Ella activó el micrófono.
Central Aéreo Costero, Ana Reyes en el bar La Lanterna, Harbor Street. Hemos establecido una zona de aterrizaje de emergencia en nuestro techo, coordenadas GPS aproximadamente. Recitó la posición de memoria y continuó. Visibilidad cero a nivel de calle, niebla moderada a nivel de azotea. Puedo proporcionar control de tierra para las operaciones de rescate. La respuesta fue inmediata. Ana Reyes, Estación Aéreo Costero. Manténgase a la espera de los Air Rescue 6501. ¿Está calificada para proveer control de zona de aterrizaje? Ana dudó un momento. La respuesta honesta implicaba credenciales que había abandonado, un pasado que había enterrado y habilidades que había jurado nunca más usar, pero allá abajo, en la niebla, había personas que estaban muriendo. Afirmativo. Central Aéreo Costero. Estoy calificada. La voz que respondió 20 segundos después era nítida, profesional y distintivamente femenina. Control de zona de aterrizaje. Aquí Air Rescue 6501. Indicativo de llamada Nimbus. Estoy en vuelo con una tripulación de 4. ETA su posición 8 minutos. ¿Cuál es el estado de su zona de aterrizaje? Ana sintió que algo se ajustaba dentro de su pecho. El ritmo familiar de la coordinación tierra-aire. La danza precisa de la comunicación que podía marcar la diferencia entre el éxito de la misión y la catástrofe. Puso los dedos en el micrófono con seguridad. Nimbus, control de zona de aterrizaje. La zona de aterrizaje es Papa Zulu. Se detuvo. Papa Zulu era terminología marine, estaban hablando con aviadores guardacostas. La zona de aterrizaje está preparada, 20 por 30 metros, libre de obstáculos. La superficie de asfalto y grava, capacidad de carga estimada de 54.000 kilos, vientos 22 grados a 8 nudos, visibilidad a nivel de zona de aterrizaje aproximadamente 100 metros. Copiamos todo control de zona de aterrizaje. Estamos recibiendo múltiples llamadas de socorro de su área, pero no podemos navegar en la niebla. ¿Puede proporcionar guía vectorial? Ana miró la densa pared gris que los rodeaba. No podía ver el agua, no podía ver el muelle encendido, no podía ver nada más allá del borde de la azotea. Pero podía oír la campana del puerto golpeando ruidosamente a unos 200 metros al sur-sureste. Podía oler el humo y estimar su origen, y podía sentir cómo los patrones de viento se doblaban alrededor de los edificios, creando un tipo de turbulencia mecánica que dificultaba los acercamientos. Nimbus. Aviso que el aterrizaje desde rumbo 045 grados le dará la mejor alineación del viento. Use la campana del puerto como su punto de navegación inicial. Está a aproximadamente 400 metros al sureste de la zona de aterrizaje. Se espera turbulencia mecánica debajo de los 50 pies debido al bañado de la azotea.
Outstanding, LZ Control. That matches our navigation plot. We'll be coming in hot. Multiple casualties reported in the water. As Anna coordinated with the helicopter, the Marines had transformed the roof into something approaching a professional landing zone. Brick supervised the final placement of the approach lights, while Dunn maintained steady water spray on the landing area. May had somehow procured a pair of orange safety vests from Elias Supplies and was laying out what looked like a proper marshalling area. "How'd you know about the turbulence?" Webb asked during a brief lull in radio traffic. "Physics," Anna replied simply. "Wind hits a building, has to go somewhere. Creates downdrafts and crossflows that can flip a helicopter if the pilot's not ready for it." From the ladder, Maria's voice called up. "We've got more casualties downstairs. Doc says she needs help. Someone's got what looks like smoke inhalation, and there's a kid with a possible broken arm." Anna felt the familiar weight of triage decisions settling on her shoulders. Helicopter inbound, limited lift capacity, multiple casualties of unknown severity. The arithmetic of emergency medicine. Who flies first? Who waits? Who might not make it at all? "Tell Doc to prepare for priority evacuation," Anna called back. "Smoke inhalation goes first if the patient's conscious and stable. Broken arm can wait unless there's vascular compromise." The sound reached them before they could see anything. The distinctive whop-whop-whop of helicopter rotors cutting through the fog.
but it was coming from the wrong direction, the sound bouncing off buildings and creating false echoes that would confuse anyone trying to navigate by audio alone. Nimbus, LZ Control, I have you on audio bearing north-northeast, but you should be approaching from 045. Check your navigation. LZ Control, Nimbus, we're getting bad GPS readings. Something's interfering with our nav system. Request you guide us in by sound and flare. Anna grabbed a handheld flare from the supply kit, checking the firing mechanism. This was old-school navigation, the kind of flying that required trust between pilot and ground controller. Get it wrong, and a 12,000-pound helicopter could end up in the street, or worse, in the harbor. Nimbus, I'm going to fire a red flare on your call. When you see it, turn right 10 degrees and descend to 100 feet. Follow my voice directions from there. Copy, LZ Control. Ready for flare. Anna pulled the ignition tab. The flare burst to life with a brilliant red glow, arcing up through the fog like a tracer round. For a moment, it illuminated the thick gray around them, creating a small bubble of visibility in the murk. LZ Control, I have your flare. Turning right, descending. The rotor noise was getting louder now, and Brick was waving the Marines back to the safety zone he'd marked with yellow glow sticks. Protocol called for everyone to be on their knees when the helicopter touched down. Rotor wash could knock a person over, and flying debris could cause serious injury. Nimbus, you're approaching from the north. Come right another 15 degrees. Altitude looks good. There's a small building directly below you, clear by approximately 20 feet. Copy, turning right. LZ in sight. I see your light pattern. And suddenly, there it was. A gray ghost materializing out of the fog, rotors beating the air into submission, navigation lights cutting through the murk like red and green stars. The MH-60 Jayhawk settled toward the roof with a kind of precision that spoke of hundreds of hours and thousands of landings. Anna found herself holding her breath. She'd seen this dance from the cockpit side, had performed it herself in conditions just as bad. But watching from the ground, seeing the trust required for a pilot to set down on an unmarked rooftop in zero visibility brought back memories she had been trying to suppress for 3 years. Nimbus, LZ Control. Nice setup down there. You've done this before. Anna keyed the microphone one last time before the helicopter touched down. Just trying to bring everyone home, Nimbus. The Jayhawk settled on the roof with the precision that spoke of exceptional piloting skill. The skids kissed the tar surface with barely a tremor, rotors still turning, downwash flattening the fog into swirling patterns that revealed glimpses of the street below before closing again like gray curtains. Anna remained crouched beside the radio, watching the crew door slide open. A Coast Guard rescue swimmer emerged first, a compact woman in a dry suit who moved with the confident urgency of someone accustomed to pulling people from impossible situations. Behind her came 2 flight mechanics, already unloading a Stokes litter from the helicopter's cargo bay. "Where are my priority patients?" the swimmer called over the rotor noise. "Ground floor, blue lights mark triage stations," she shouted back, pointing toward the ladder entrance. "Smoke inhalation, conscious and stable. Possible spinal injury, moved on a door, immobilized as best we could manage." Doc Ortiz emerged from the ladder well like she had been shot out of a cannon, her gray hair whipping in the rotor wash but her movements calm and professional. She carried a small notebook and immediately approached the rescue swimmer. "Valentina Ortiz, Navy Corpsman, I've got your priorities triaged and prepped for transport." She had to shout over the rotor noise, but her voice carried the authority of someone who'd done this before. "First patient is 43-year-old male, smoke inhalation, vital stable but oxygen sats dropping. Second is possible C-spine injury, 22-year-old female, fell during the initial quake, alert and oriented but complaining of neck pain." The swimmer nodded approvingly. "Good work, Doc. Let's get them loaded." Anna watched the coordinated chaos of a medical evacuation, remembering how it felt from the pilot's seat. The careful choreography of moving injured people, the weight calculations, the constant awareness that every minute on the ground was a minute when something could go wrong. Brick had stationed himself at the ladder entrance, controlling the flow of people onto the roof. Only essential personnel,
the medical team, the patients, and one family member with the injured woman. Everyone else stayed below, out of the way but ready to help if needed. From the cockpit, a voice called out, "LZ Control, Nimbus. How copy?" Anna keyed the handheld radio. "Lima Charlie, Nimbus. Outstanding job on the approach control. Haven't had navigation that smooth since I was flying with Marine VMM 365 out of Pendleton." A pause. "You wouldn't happen to be Anna Death Angel Reyes, would you?" The question hit Anna like a physical blow. She stared at the radio for a moment, aware that Brick was watching her, that the Marines were listening, that her carefully constructed anonymity was dissolving in real time. "Affirmative," she said quietly. "Holy shit. Sorry, excuse the language. This is Rhea Patel. I studied your Helmand Province after-action report in flight school. That zero-vis medevac you pulled off saved a lot of lives." Anna's hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder, where the scar from that night still pulled tight when the weather changed. Helmand Province. The mission that had made her reputation and ended her career, all in the same night. "That was a long time ago," Anna said into the radio. "Maybe, but it's good to have you on the net tonight. We've got more casualties coming in. Sounds like the pier collapse trapped some folks on boats in the inner harbor. Could use ground control for multiple cycles if you're up for it." Anna looked around the roof. The Marines were watching her with new respect, the kind of recognition that came from understanding they were in the presence of someone whose reputation preceded her. Doc Ortiz had paused in her patient care to listen. Even the Coast Guard crew seemed to be moving with extra precision, as if they were being watched by someone whose opinion mattered. "I'm up for it," Anna said. The first patients were loaded efficiently. The smoke inhalation case on the primary litter, the possible spinal injury secured on a backboard that Elias had somehow produced from the bar's emergency supplies. Doc Ortiz climbed into the helicopter to accompany them, her field kit slung over her shoulder. "Nimbus, LZ Control, patients loaded, crew aboard, you're clear for departure." The Jayhawk lifted off with the same precision it had shown landing, rising vertically until it was clear of the building's rotor disc interference before transitioning to forward flight. Within seconds, it was swallowed by the fog, leaving only the fading sound of rotors and the acrid smell of exhaust. Anna stood in the sudden quiet, aware that something fundamental had changed. The Marines were looking at her differently, not with the casual dismissal of an hour ago, but with the respect accorded to someone who'd proven themselves under fire. "The Helmand mission," Brick said quietly. "I heard about that. Zero visibility dust out, troops in contact, multiple casualties." 17 Marines and 1 corpsman, Anna said simply. "All came home. Because you flew a mission everyone said was impossible." Anna didn't answer. She was already thinking ahead to the next helicopter, the next set of casualties, the next impossible decision about who lived and who waited. The fog was still thick, the emergency was far from over, and people were still trapped in the harbor. From below, Maria's voice called up. "Anna, we've got more people coming in. Family with 2 kids. They were on a boat when the pier caught fire. Kids are scared but seem okay. Parents have some cuts and burns. Set them up with first aid. Priority is keeping them warm and calm. We'll get them out on the next bird." She turned back to the radio, already preparing for the next coordination cycle. But first, there was something she needed to do. She looked at Dunn, who'd been quiet since the helicopter departed. "Lance Corporal Dunn." Yes, Anna." "You want to know how I earned my call sign?" Dunn nodded, suddenly looking much younger than his 20 years. "It wasn't because I brought death. It was because I carried it away. 17 times that night in Helmand. Each casualty we loaded was someone death couldn't have. That's what we do. We cheat death, one patient at a time." The radio crackled to life. "LZ Control,
This is Coast Guard 6502, inbound your position with second lift capability, request approach guidance. Anna keyed the microphone, settling back into the rhythm of coordination and control. Coast Guard 6502 LZ Control, I have you loud and clear, stand by for approach briefing. The night was far from over, but Anna Reyes, former Marine pilot, current bartender, eternal death angel, was exactly where she belonged, bringing people home through the fog. The call came through the bar's landline, which had somehow started working again at exactly 22:47 hours. Elias answered, then immediately gestured for Anna to take the phone. "This is the Lantern." "Thank God someone picked up. My name's Robert Kim. I Googled Harbor Street emergency and got your number. We're trapped on a boat and I don't know what else to do." Anna grabbed a cocktail napkin and a pen. "Robert, I'm Anna. Tell me your situation. Location, how many people, what's your immediate danger?" "We're on a rental skiff about 200 yards from the main pier. There was this explosion or something, electrical fire, I think, and now there's burning fuel on the water between us and shore. I've got my 2 kids with me, Sophie and David. They're 8 and 6. The smoke is getting really bad." Anna closed her eyes, visualizing the harbor layout. The rental dock was on the north side of the marina, which meant they were likely trapped between the burning pier infrastructure and the fuel spill from damaged boats. Wind from the southwest would be pushing both smoke and fire towards any boats in that area.
Robert, you're going to be fine. My name is Anna Reyes, and I'm coordinating rescue operations from here. I need you to listen very carefully and do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that? Yes, absolutely. First, do you have life jackets for everyone? We put them on when the fire started. Good man. Now, I need you to look around. Can you see any lights through the smoke? Navigation lights, boat lights, anything? There was a pause. Sounds of movement, children's voices in the background. I can see what looks like a green light, maybe northeast of us. It's hard to tell with all this smoke. Anna looked toward the harbor, though she could see nothing through the fog from street level. But she knew the harbor layout by heart. Every local did. A green light northeast of the rental area would be the navigation marker at the harbor entrance, the one that guided boats safely between the rocky jetty and the main channel. That's perfect, Robert. That green light is your way out. But we're going to do this very slowly and carefully. I want you to turn your engine. Can you do that? It's already running. I was afraid to turn it off. Smart thinking. Now, I want you to turn toward that green light, but just barely, maybe 2 paddle strokes to your right. Don't use the throttle yet. Just let the current carry you. On the roof above, Anna could hear Brick coordinating with the Marines, preparing for another helicopter arrival. But her focus was entirely on the voice in her ear, a civilian dad doing his best to keep his family safe in a situation he'd never trained for. "Okay, I think we're turning. The kids are scared. Sophie keeps asking if we're going to die. Tell Sophie that Anna says she's very brave and that we're going to get her and David back to shore safely. Can you put me on speaker so they can hear me?" A click, then the sound quality changed. "Sophie and David, this is Anna. I'm talking to your dad from a big building near the water, and I can see where you are. You're doing great, and we're going to play a game, okay? It's called Follow the Green Light, and your dad is going to be the best boat captain ever." A small voice, probably Sophie. "Is the fire going to get us?" "No, sweetheart, the fire can't follow you where we're going. But I need you and David to be very quiet for a few minutes while your dad navigates, okay? Can you count to 100 for me?" "I can count to 100. "Perfect. Start counting, and when you get to 100, we'll be much closer to safety." Anna covered the phone's mouthpiece and called up to the roof. "Brick, I need someone with eyes on the harbor entrance, family of 3 in a small boat trying to navigate around the fire." "On it," came the immediate response. Back to the phone. "Robert, how are you doing with that turn toward the green light?"
I think we're facing the right direction now. The smoke isn't as thick here, and I can definitely see that green light. But there's still fire on the water between us and shore. That's okay. We're not going to shore yet. I want you to follow the green light toward the harbor mouth. That's the opening between the two jetties. The current there runs clean, no fuel spill. Once you're in the main channel, you'll be safe. Anna was gambling on her knowledge of harbor dynamics. The main shipping channel was regularly dredged and had good water circulation. Any fuel spill from the pier area would be contained in the shallower marina basin by the jetty system, basic physics and harbor engineering. From the roof above, May Park's voice called down, "Anna, I can see a small boat moving toward the harbor entrance. Looks like they're clear of the main fire area." "Robert, you're doing great. Keep following that green light, but I want you to throttle up just a little, maybe quarter speed. The sooner you're in the main channel, the better." "Okay, we're moving faster now. The kids finished counting to 100 twice." Anna smiled despite the tension. "Tell them they're the best counters I've ever worked with. Now, as you get closer to that green light, you're going to see a red light on the other side. Those mark the safe channel. I want you to stay between them. Green on your right, red on your left." This was basic navigation, the kind of thing any weekend boater should know. But in a crisis, with smoke and fire and scared children, even simple tasks became monumentally difficult. Anna's job was to break everything down into manageable steps. "I see the red light now. We're between them, moving toward the ocean?" "Exactly right. You're in the safe channel now, Robert. The worst is behind you. In about 2 minutes, you're going to see boats coming toward you. Those are Coast Guard rescue vessels. They've been waiting for you to get clear of the harbor." It was a small lie, but a necessary one. Anna had no idea if Coast Guard surface vessels were available, but she knew they would be soon. And hope was as important as navigation in a situation like this.
"Anna," Robert's voice was steadier now. "I don't know how to thank you. Just get your family home safe. That's all the thanks I need." 20 minutes later, Anna watched from the roof as running lights appeared through the fog, Coast Guard small boats making their way into the harbor to begin systematic searches for other stranded vessels. Robert, Kim, and his children were safe, transferred to a rescue boat just outside the harbor entrance. But the night was far from over. The second wave of casualties began arriving at 01:45 hours, carried in by a combination of Coast Guard small boats and civilian Good Samaritans who'd managed to navigate the fog using Anna's radio guidance. The Lantern had transformed into something resembling a field hospital, with Doc Ortiz directing medical care from multiple stations throughout the main floor. Anna found herself facing the kind of decisions she'd hoped never to make again. Who flew first when there weren't enough helicopters? Who waited when waiting might mean dying? Who got the last oxygen mask when there were 3 people who needed it? "We've got a problem," Doc announced, pulling Anna aside near the bar. Her gray hair was damp with sweat despite the cool night air, and her hands bore the telltale stains of emergency medicine, blood, betadine, and the residue of torn latex gloves. "Talk to me." "Cardiac event. 62-year-old male, probably brought on by stress and smoke inhalation. He's stable for now but needs a hospital. Broken leg, compound fracture, 14-year-old girl who fell during the pier evacuation. She's in pain but not critical. And we've got a possible internal bleeding case, young guy who got hit by debris when the fuel tanks exploded. 3 patients, 1 helicopter inbound. Space for 2 casualties maximum." Anna had made similar calculations in Afghanistan, in places where the arithmetic of triage meant some people lived and some didn't. The weight of it settled on her shoulders like a familiar, unwelcome coat. Assessment on the internal bleeding. Vitals are dropping slowly but consistently. He's conscious, oriented, but his abdomen's rigid and he's showing signs of hypovolemic shock. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, running through protocols she'd memorized years ago. Internal bleeding was insidious. Patients could look stable right until they weren't. Cardiac cases could wait if they were stable and had good oxygen saturation. The broken leg was painful but not life-threatening. Internal bleeding and cardiac go first.
The girl waits for the next bird. Doc nodded approvingly. That's what I would have chosen. But the parent didn't see it that way. He cornered Anna near the makeshift triage area, his face flushed with anger and desperation. "You're telling me some stranger goes before my daughter? She's in agony." Anna had dealt with this before, the parent who couldn't see past their own child's pain to the larger picture. She kept her voice level, professional. "Sir, your daughter's injury is serious but stable. The other patient could die without immediate hospital care. She's 14 years old, and she's going to be fine. I promise you, we'll get her on the next helicopter. But right now you're playing God with my kid's life." The accusation hit harder than Anna expected. Playing God, that's what they'd called her decisions in Afghanistan too, when she'd had to choose which Marines got the limited seats on outbound flights. The weight of those choices had followed her home, contributed to the nightmares that eventually led to her medical discharge. Brick appeared at Anna's shoulder, his presence solid and reassuring. "Sir, I understand you're scared, but Anna's got more experience with this than anyone here. Your daughter's gonna be okay." The man looked between them, seeing something in their faces that made him step back. "You promise me she goes on the next helicopter?" "I have your word." 15 minutes later, she watched the helicopter disappear into the fog, carrying the cardiac patient and the internal bleeding case. Doc had gone with them again, leaving the bar's medical station in the hands of Maria and a retired EMT who'd showed up when word of the emergency spread through the neighborhood. The girl with the broken leg lay on an improvised stretcher made from a pool table and blankets, her father holding her hand while they waited for the next aircraft. Anna checked her watch. The next helicopter was 20 minutes out, assuming it could navigate the worsening weather conditions. "Anna," May Park approached quietly, her radio in her hand. "I've got Coast Guard on the line. They're asking about landing zone capacity for multiple aircraft. Sounds like they want to stage a larger operation." Anna took the radio, considering the implications. Multiple helicopters meant they could move more patients faster, but it also meant coordinating approaches in zero visibility, with aircraft converging on the same small landing zone, the kind of complex air traffic control that required precise timing and absolute trust between pilots and ground controllers. "Coast Guard operations, this is LZ Control. I can handle sequential approaches with 5-minute separation or single ship operations with hot refuel if you've got ground support standing by." "LZ Control, we're looking at a possible multi-casualty event. Preliminary reports suggest a tour boat may have capsized in the outer harbor. We need maximum throughput for the next 2 hours." Anna felt her stomach drop. A capsized tour boat meant dozens of potential casualties, many of them tourists who wouldn't have cold water survival gear. Hypothermia cases, near drownings, trauma from the vessel breaking apart. The kind of mass casualty event that overwhelmed even well-prepared emergency systems. "Copy, Coast Guard. LZ is prepared for continuous operations. Recommend you establish an air traffic control pattern with holding points at the harbor mouth and inland. I can provide precision approach guidance for each aircraft." "Outstanding, LZ Control. Be advised we're also launching surface rescue assets and requesting mutual aid from Navy and Marine Corps Aviation. This is about to get very busy." Anna handed the radio back to May, who had been listening intently to every word of the coordination. The young Marine's face reflected a mixture of awe and determination. She was beginning to understand the scale of what they were dealing with. "How many people do you think were on that tour boat?" May asked. "This time of year, probably 40 to 60 passengers plus crew." Anna looked around the bar, calculating space and resources. "We're going to need more triage areas, more medical supplies, and a lot more help."
As if summoned by her words, the front door opened to admit a stream of volunteers, neighbors who'd heard about the emergency, off-duty medical personnel who'd been called in, and a handful of active-duty military who'd made their way through the fog to help. The lantern was becoming a command post, and Anna found herself at the center of an operation that was growing beyond anything she'd imagined when she'd first climbed to the roof. "Ma'am," Dunn approached, his earlier cockiness completely replaced by respectful professionalism. "What do you need us to do?" Anna looked at him, really looked at him, seeing past the young Marine's bluster to someone who was ready to step up when it mattered. "Get everyone organized into teams. medical support, helicopter ground crew, communications, and logistics. This is about to become the busiest landing zone on the West Coast. By 0300 hours, the Lantern had become the hub of the largest civilian rescue operation in the harbor's history. The fog had finally begun to lift slightly, revealing a scene that looked like a disaster movie. Burning pier infrastructure, Coast Guard cutters with searchlights sweeping the water, and a steady stream of helicopters moving through carefully coordinated approach patterns that Anna controlled with the precision of an orchestra conductor. The tour boat, the Pacific Explorer, had indeed capsized while trying to evacuate passengers from the harbor during the initial earthquake. 53 people had been aboard: tourists from a cruise ship, a wedding party celebrating their rehearsal dinner, and a crew of 6 who tried desperately to keep everyone safe as their vessel broke apart on the rocks near the harbor entrance. Anna had coordinated 17 helicopter approaches in the past 2 hours, each one carrying 2 to 3 survivors in various states of hypothermia, injury, and shock. The Lantern's main floor looked like a scene from a military field hospital. Triage areas marked with colored lights, medical personnel moving efficiently between patients, and a steady flow of survivors being processed, treated, and evacuated to area hospitals. LZ Control, this is Marine Air 432. We're inbound with 3 critical hypothermia cases and requesting immediate priority landing. The voice belonged to a Marine Corps CH-53 pilot who'd been diverted from a training exercise to assist with the rescue operation. Anna keyed her microphone, her voice hoarse from hours of continuous coordination, but still clear and authoritative. Marine Air 432, you're cleared for immediate approach. Pattern is clear, wind still 220 at 8 knots. Medical team standing by. She'd lost track of how many aircraft she'd talked down through the fog. Coast Guard Jayhawks, Marine Corps helicopters, Navy search and rescue birds, even a civilian medevac helicopter that had volunteered to help. Each approach required complete concentration, wind calculations, obstacle clearance, coordination with ground crews, and the constant awareness that any mistake could turn a rescue into a tragedy. Beside her on the roof, Mai Park had evolved into an indispensable communications coordinator. She monitored multiple radio frequencies, tracked aircraft movements on a hand-drawn chart, and maintained contact with the various rescue vessels working the harbor waters. Her precise note-taking and clear communications had impressed even the experienced Coast Guard operators. Anna, Brick called from his position near the landing zone. This inbound marine bird is bigger than what we've been handling. CH-53, that's a lot more rotor wash. Anna nodded, already calculating the implications of the super stallion was nearly twice the size of the helicopters they've been working with, which meant more downwash, higher approach speeds, and greater precision required for landing on their improvised helipad. All ground personnel, this is LZ Control. Inbound aircraft is a heavy-lift helicopter. Everyone not directly involved in patient movement needs to be in the stairwell or behind the HVAC units. This is about to become the busiest landing zone on the West Coast. The Marines scattered to positions they'd rehearsed throughout the night, while Anna prepared for what would be the most challenging approach yet. The CH-53 emerged from the fog like a flying building, its twin rotors creating a thunderous noise that rattled windows throughout the neighborhood. Anna guided it down with a series of precise radio calls, talking the pilot through the narrow approach corridor between buildings while coordinating with the ground crew to ensure the landing zone remained clear. The helicopter touched down with surprising gentleness for such a large aircraft, its crew immediately beginning the complex process of transferring critical patients. "Beautiful work, LZ Control," the Marine pilot transmitted as his crew loaded the hypothermia cases. "Haven't seen approach control that smooth since I was stationed at Pendleton." "Just bringing everyone home," Anna replied, the phrase that had become her standard response throughout the long night. As the helicopter lifted off, Anna allowed herself a moment to survey the scene around her.
The roof had been transformed into a professional-grade helipad with wind indicators, approach lights, and safety equipment that Elias somehow procured from his apparently inexhaustible supply of emergency materials. The Marines worked with the efficiency of a seasoned ground crew, each person knowing their role without being told. Down in the bar, Doc Ortiz had returned from her third helicopter ride and was directing a triage system that had processed over 40 casualties with only one fatality, an elderly man whose heart had given out before they could get him to the hospital. Under any other circumstances, it would have been considered a miracle of emergency medicine. Anna, Maria appeared at the roof access, her face streaked with exhaustion, but her eyes bright with purpose. Coast Guard says they've accounted for everyone from the tour boat. Last helicopter is inbound with the final 2 survivors. Anna felt something loosen in her chest, the constant tension of knowing people were still out there, still in danger. Injuries? Minor hypothermia, some cuts and bruises. They're going to be fine. The final approach of the night was almost anticlimactic after the drama of the heavy-lift helicopter. A Coast Guard Jayhawk settled onto the landing zone with practiced ease, loaded its passengers, and lifted off into the gradually lightening sky. Dawn was an hour away, but the fog was finally beginning to dissipate, revealing the full scope of the night's disaster and rescue operation.
As the helicopter's navigation lights disappeared into the distance, Anna realized that someone was standing behind her. She turned to find Lieutenant Colonel Armin Lazari, the battalion executive officer, watching her with an expression of professional assessment. "Colonel," she said, straightening unconsciously into a more military bearing. "Ms. Reyes, or should I say, Death Angel." His voice carried respect rather than irony. "I've been monitoring radio traffic for the past hour. Impressive work." Anna wasn't sure how to respond. She'd spent 3 years avoiding exactly this kind of attention, this recognition of who she'd been before. "Just doing what needed to be done, sir." "That's exactly what I heard, and that's exactly what I'm going to tell my Marines when I debrief them tomorrow." He looked around the roof at the Marines who are now securing equipment and preparing to stand down. They learned something important tonight about making assumptions and recognizing excellence when they see it. Below them, the harbor was coming into focus as the fog continued to lift. The damage was extensive. A section of the main pier had indeed collapsed, several boats had been destroyed in the fuel fire, and the rental dock area looked like a combat zone. But scattered throughout the harbor were Coast Guard vessels, civilian boats that had volunteered to help, and the organized chaos of a successful rescue operation. 52 people had been pulled from the water. Dozens more had been evacuated from the harbor area. The Lantern had served as the coordination center for the largest civilian rescue operation in the region's history, and it had all been orchestrated by a woman who'd been pouring drinks 8 hours earlier. Anna looked out over the harbor as the sun began to paint the horizon with the first hints of dawn. The night of saves was over, but she knew that something fundamental had changed, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. 6 weeks later, Anna adjusted the new helipad stencil painted on the Lantern's roof, a proper NATO marking that would guide aircraft even in thick fog. Below, the bar buzzed with its usual evening crowd, but something had fundamentally changed. Veterans now gathered regularly for May Park's resilience meetings. Doc Ortiz ran trauma response workshops. Dunn volunteered every Tuesday, having learned the difference between bravado and courage. The locked cabinet labeled LZ Kit contained everything needed for emergency operations, flares, medical supplies, and radio equipment. Anna had accepted Elias's offer to serve as disaster coordinator, finally integrating her past with her present. When the foghorn sounded across the harbor, Anna no longer flinched. Instead, she looked up with readiness, knowing that sometimes the best way to honor your call sign is to keep answering the call. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.